I already knew what this week's second episode of Snake Stories was going to be about. At the time that I released the pilot episode for this series, Helldivers 2 was on fucking fire. And I was going to tell the whole story of what happened ever since Johan Pilestedt left Arrowhead, and subsequently the Into the Unjust update dropped. We had a whole bunch of content creators taking a break from the game due to performance issues and the game hard-locking people's PCs and sometimes even causing hardware damage because the game has a fucking rootkit inside it. We were promised a patch on Tuesday. That patch didn't come. They said they were going to either release the patch or give an update about it on Friday. At the time of this recording, today is Thursday, and the patch has dropped. So, admittedly, I have not been able to find the time to play this new patch yet. I literally heard the news while I was at school on campus, and I don't know if I will be up in time for me to try the patch out with my friends, but they have tried it out, and they have said, we are so back. So I'm going to skip the entire narrative leading up to now because people are no longer focused on that. People are focused on how Arrowhead is reacting to the feedback and criticism and everything that they've been receiving in this moment, and they are trying to gauge whether that reaction is actually sufficient to address some of the admittedly long-standing issues in the game. There have been a number of longer-standing ones that have only taken until this patch to be addressed. But to give a brief overview of what happened ever since Pilestedt left Arrowhead, we got the Into the Unjust update, the Rupture Strain was viciously unbalanced, and all of the bugs would gravitate towards the host of the game. You basically were required to carry a medium pen primary onto Oshaone, and the dragon roaches would very often spawn faster than you could kill them. And then, of course, there were performance issues that were accumulating thanks to technical debt that somehow seems to get worse and worse over time, even though there were only maybe a few minor updates ever since Into the Unjust dropped. Arrowhead had to remove the Rupture Strain from the game for 5 weeks, and now we're seeing it reintroduced in this patch, and we're going to talk about that a little bit because I have had some experience with the Rupture Strain. It was annoying back then. It might still be annoying now. I've only really enjoyed fighting the bots just because they're a ranged enemy. Unlike the bugs or squids, you can get a lot more tactical with how you deal with them, but that's a discussion for another day. We're going to talk about the patch notes. I'm going to read through some of them, summarize what's been going on, talk about some of the changes that I will be most excited for when I am finally able to take some time to dive into the game. And yeah, that'll be the plan for today's episode. Into the Unjust 4.1.0. Freedom's greetings, Helldivers. This update focuses on what matters most right now, making Helldivers 2 feel better to play. Thank fuck. We've overhauled how we approach patching to better target the pain points you've shared with us. That means more focus on stability, balance, and the issues that affect your experience the most. Over 200 bugs have been fixed, along with key balance updates and quality of life improvements. For a deeper look, check out Lennart and Niklas's video breakdown I have. They basically just read the patch notes aloud and go into a little more detail, but I'll be summing it up for you guys here. While new features are coming, this patch marks a big step forward, both the game itself and in how we work to improve it. More refinements are already underway, which is very good to hear. The interview with the creative director for the game, I believe it was the creative director, left us with a lot of uncertainties. And we weren't sure if Arrowhead were actually going to keep their word because in that interview, they only vaguely touched upon performance and optimization before talking about some of the deeper philosophy of the game. And I think they addressed grunt fantasy again, which is kind of funny because I don't think grunt fantasy was ever really a thing in this game. After all, Helldivers are considered like the elite of the Super Earth Armed Forces. If you wanted to be playing as a grunt in the game, you should be playing as like the Seaf Army, you know, the ones in the blue and everything like that. But anyway, that's off topic. Continuing on, general changes to balancing. Primaries, sidearms, throwables, and stratagems have had improvements made to increase the overall effectiveness. Light and medium penetration weapons now offer more distinct advantages. SMGs and pistols have been adjusted to emphasize their role as close quarters weapons. Melee weapons and throwables have been improved to make each feel more impactful and unique in their function, and the resupply rack is not climbable anymore. This means I can turn auto vault back on. Oh my god. You have no idea how many times I've run up to a resupply rack to grab supplies off of it, and I just climb on top of it. It gets annoying after it's happened like 50, 100, 200, 250 something times, so there's that. Okay, we have a lot of rebalancing and patches to go through, so I'm just going to talk about some of the stuff that I'm most excited about personally. Because there's a lot. I will provide a link to the patch notes in the description for you to read yourself and pick out what you think might impact your gameplay the most. For the Liberator Penetrator, they increase the damage from 60 to 65. That's always good. A slight damage boost will always just make it more fun to take out enemies, and you'll need a little less bullet to do it. The Liberator Concussive has had its damage and durable damage increase. This is actually a really interesting change for me because I've tried the Liberator Concussive a few times, and it's actually a really interesting gun because for what it does, just shooting like little bullets, it has a ridiculous amount of stagger force, which I think is the main thing about it. It's like sort of a crowd controlling weapon. Comes with drum mags by default too. And I've been meaning to try it a little more, but as they basically made the game harder over time, I've sort of ditched the Liberator Concussive in favor of things like the Deadeye or, what's another weapon I like to take a lot? The Liberator Penetrator, I guess you could say. I've been trying to build the Defender, but the game has not been treating that well because there's a lot of enemies with medium pen, and even though the Defender does a fair amount of damage for an SMG, it's basically like a Liberator that you can wield one-handed. I mean, we'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, I want to see if the new Liberator Concussive will actually have a noticeable difference or if it'll just be a subtle little thing. I've asked around, haven't gotten any clear answers yet, so we'll just have to see when I actually try it. Maybe I'll do that on stream, maybe I won't. I'll have to figure it out. I already had this week's stream planned. Speaking of the Defender, its damage has been increased from 80 to 100, and its durable damage has been increased from 8 to 18, but its drag has been increased from 0.6 to 1.2. And basically what this means is, when you try to hit enemies from farther away now, the bullet will either do less damage or it'll just not hit at all, which makes sense for something like an SMG as like a CQB weapon, while the AR is a little bit more mid to long range. So I don't have any problems with the drag increase, and because of the way I already play with SMGs, I'm not like clicking enemies from 50 meters away or something like that. So I don't know if it'll be too noticeable for me and the way I play with the weapons, but we'll have to see. However, 80 to 100 is ridiculous. That's gonna kind of just absolutely lawnmower voteless when I dive on Illuminate planets now, so I might end up taking the Defender with me to fight the Illuminate. We'll have to see. I mean, I might end up taking it in general just to grind it because I really think there's some potential in the Defender with drum magazines. So I really want to get it to level, I believe it's 23 where the drum magazines unlock. It's a long and arduous process, but we'll have to see what happens when we get to it. The Sickle has had its damage and durable damage increased, which is a lot of fun. I remember I used to like taking the Sickle on the bot front a lot because it was like a laser gun, because the bots also seem to have laser guns of their own, and it has a cooldown instead of reloading magazines, which means if you manage your shots well, then you can basically have infinite ammo as long as you let it cool down. And on planets with extreme cold, it's even better because that just accelerates the cooldown further. There haven't really been any changes to any of the sidearms that I'm interested in. I guess the damage increase and drag increase on the Peacemaker is interesting because sometimes I take the Peacemaker on the Illuminate front, but I have not seen any mentions of the Senator or the Talon in the sidearm section of the patch notes. Those are my two main sidearms lately, so I guess those are fine as is anyway. I mean, I only occasionally use them for certain purposes, like trying to shoot a Hulk in the face when my autocannon needs to reload or something like that. Now, here's an interesting one. The Dynamite has had its damage increased from 700 to 1000, its armor pen increased from medium to heavy, and its demolition strength increased from 30 to 40. And many players have already been reporting that means this thing can close Bile Titan holes. But more importantly for me, that means it can destroy bot fabricators from the outside. Sometimes when I'm clearing a bot outpost, I'll get like surrounded and absolutely swamped. There will be like 5 berserkers coming for me. I'm taking heavy fire from this other direction. There's a Hulk behind me that I need to address, and I don't really have time to do anything to get rid of the fabricator that is producing more bots, except just panic throw one of my throwables in its general direction. And unless I'm carrying the thermite, then I'm kind of screwed. And sometimes I don't take the thermite on bot missions. But if I take the dynamite, it'll blast a bunch of the chaff if I miss the fabricator, and if it lands next to the fabricator, it destroys it from the outside, and that'll be one less problem when I'm clearing that heavy outpost on my own. Generally just a really good change that I really like to see, and now the dynamite might actually hit like dynamite. We also get more G6 frags. I mean, I still use these things all the time just because you can carry so many of them, but now we're carrying one more. And that'll be really good for closing bug nests and stuff like that. Overall, it's a very small change, but one that I do like to see, just getting an extra grenade when you pick it. Going into the stratagems, the anti-material rifle has had its durable damage significantly increased from 180 to 225, and you get more starting magazines and max spare magazines. Starting magazines don't matter if you have the right booster. I forget what it's called, and I do have it. Every support weapon I call down now comes fully loaded with all the spare magazines or ammo or whatever that you can carry, but it's still a nice thing to have for those who don't have that booster yet. But the durable damage increase actually has me interested in using this thing, because I picked it up once on a mission just randomly because I think I had died, dropped in, and I didn't have access to my support weapon again. So I found a random AMR next to a Seaf campsite or whatever you want to call it. I tried it and I really liked how good it felt, but I felt the damage was a bit lacking. Like, I could tell, like, shooting a Hulk from a distance or something like that, trying to shoot at a charger, it just didn't feel quite as powerful as it should have. My idea for how the AMR could have been fixed was to give it not heavy armor penetration, but anti-tank 1. I feel like if the AMR had anti-tank 1, that would have also been a good way to buff it just a little bit so that it actually is an anti-material rifle instead of just an upgraded version of the Deadeye. And you could actually take out some heavy targets on especially the bot front by just sniping their weak points if you can. But we have increased durable damage. It still has heavy pen, which can take out a decent number of targets. From a clip I saw, it can one-shot Hulks in the eye now, which I didn't even know it was not capable of previously, but it's really good that it can do that now. Overall, this just makes me want to try the AMR now. The autocannon has had its damage increased from 260 to 325, which feels ridiculous. I remember when the autocannon was my trusty support weapon, and that has now kind of fallen out of favor towards the harpoon gun, which was not mentioned in these patch notes, but the harpoon gun is already pretty fun as is, so I mean, I like to carry it around, especially on the bug and squid front, because the gas just makes them ever so slightly less annoying. But yeah, maybe it'll be time for me to start packing the autocannon again, especially on team missions. I provide a lot of fire support with that thing. The solo silo's health has been increased from 800 to 1500, and now enemies will ignore it. Okay, so when I've been solo diving and you know, I call a solo silo on the spot where I drop in, pick up the designator and everything, even though it's never happened to me because I just on principle, knowing that enemies used to attack it, just get away from the spot where I drop it as soon as I can. The fact that enemies now ignore it is just a huge thing for my peace of mind, because even going through a mission where I had dropped a solo silo and I had the designator on me, I would just be concerned in the back of my mind, like, is there some enemy that I'm not seeing that's gonna find the solo silo, go aggro on it, and destroy it? And then when I actually need to launch the missile, it's not gonna do anything. I don't have to worry about that anymore now because enemies will ignore it. That's like one of the best things that could have happened to it. I think it's still... I don't know. I mean, could it still use some more demo force to be able to take out stratagem jammers and whatnot? I don't feel like it would trivialize stratagem jammers and other similar objectives necessarily, because it's still sort of an exercise in preparation. I mean, you could just... Actually, no, you can't. Your stratagems are jammed. Okay, so for the stratagem jammer in particular, it is kind of an exercise in preparation. But there are a lot of other things that are not stratagem jammers or the Eye of Sauron looking detector towers that I think the solo silo could also be really effective as like an alternative option against if it were given a little bit more demo force. But unfortunately, it only has enough demo force to take out like fabricators and bug holes and stuff like that. So whatever, maybe we'll see that in a future balance patch. I can hope, fingers crossed. Changes to the enemies. They made some changes to the Illuminate. which is like the worst fucking faction, and I'm sure tons of people except for the Helldivers agree with me on that one. Flesh mobs. Main health decreased. Oh my god, I'm so excited. I can barely speak. Main health decreased from 6k to 5k. That is a thing. And it's a great thing. Most health zones are slightly more durable. Well, we got a durable damage increase for the light pen, and the entire flesh mob is like unarmored or something like that, so I'm not too concerned about that one. And targeting the faces deals extra damage to its main health, effectively creating weak points. I tapped into an Odo livestream before this podcast episode. I used to need to dump an entire chain and then some from a stalwart into a single flesh mob to kill it. But now with the ability to target the faces and deal extra damage to its main health, Odo showed that it only takes about a third of a stalwart chain to take the flesh mob down, which is really good for higher difficulty missions where there's gonna be like a million of them fucking spawning. There just was not enough ammo to take them all down efficiently when they did not have a weak point. But now they do have a weak point. You can just take out the faces to get more damage in. A much needed change, and I'm kind of surprised it took this long because we've been having this since like they came back from when we stopped the movement of the Meridian Singularity. It's just great changes all around. Elevated Overseers have been nerfed. A single Seeker Grenade is enough to one-shot it now, which is, I mean, I haven't had too many encounters with Elevated Overseers because I prefer to play the Illuminate on lower difficulty anyway because they are the worst faction. But having its head armor decreased is actually something that I also suggested because even though the jetpack is technically a weak point, it's extremely difficult to actually hit it because it'll be behind the Overseer most of the time. So you try to aim for the jetpack, you're just gonna hit the Overseer in the chest with that annoying ablative armor and whatnot. But now you can just shoot it in the head. It's still a challenge because they move around so much, but now we have better ways to fight back. And the Leviathan now has harvester lasers on it instead of the stupid plasma cannon projectile things. Those would ragdoll people all over the place. I think I've only ever encountered one like once or twice when diving with people in the Ghost Divers Discord, and they drag me into super Helldive. But that's also a very welcome change because less ragdolling is generally just better. Like when I get ragdolled hard enough, oh my gosh, this is such an annoying thing. When I get ragdolled hard enough, I can't even stim so that I can stay in the fight and get back up and fight back when I'm actually able to get back up. Getting constantly ragdolled is not a fun experience because your death is basically inevitable, and when you're ragdolled, you can't stim, you can't shoot, you can't even enter a stratagem code to like drop an Eagle 500 on yourself as like a last resort and to take everything else down with you. I don't think harvester lasers ragdoll you. I think they just do a crap ton of damage, but I would rather that than getting ragdolled, and you can actually see where they're shooting and dive out of the way now. So, I mean, that's just a good thing, I think. So, the Rupture Strain is back. The Rupture Warrior's movement speed when underground has been decreased. It needs to surface more often when moving underground. Its burrow attack is slightly slower and leaves more space to be dodged. Smaller damage boxes when attacking from below. And its front legs armor has been decreased from medium to light, allowing you to actually use your light pen weapons against the damn thing. And it will prefer to emerge before attacking sentries instead of destroying them from below ground. These are all very much needed changes because when I first experienced the Rupture Strain, it was like a stalker nest was on the map at all times, and there wasn't even something you could do about it to get rid of the stalkers, and it would send like a billion stalkers at you at once. The Dragon Roach's spawn rate has been decreased, thank goodness, because on this 3-person team that I'm on with Moby and August, when we were diving the higher difficulties that we're capable of on Oshone, we would kill a Dragon Roach with like 5 expendable napalms and 3 expendable anti-tanks, and as if to just slap us in the face, the game would just spawn a new one in its place right after that, and we have to deal with it before proceeding with a mission objective. So they decreased the spawn rate, cutting it in half for difficulties 5 and 6, reducing it by 40% for difficulties 7 through 9, and reducing it by a third on difficulty 10. These are all very good changes as well, and I think they'll be made easier to fight with the fact that wings are kind of a weak point now. Destroying the wings will instantly kill the Dragon Roach, which is a very good thing because The wings logically should be a weak point. You can shoot a Shrieker's wings off and it dies. Why couldn't the same happen to the Dragon Roach? But now the wings have their own health pool of 4,000 and they are particularly vulnerable to explosions. So stuff like even your expendable napalm, but also the eruptor, the autocannon, the recoilless rifle on high explosive mode. I wonder how many people are even aware that the recoilless rifle has an alternative mode that's just bigger boom with slightly less armor penetration. But explosions can do more damage to the wings, and the wings are now sort of a weak point where you can target them to kill the Dragon Roach more efficiently if you spray a bunch of lead at it. Moby actually told me that they were able to take a Dragon Roach down by shooting it in the wings with a heavy machine gun. That, I think, is a very good sign for how much easier the Dragon Roaches will be to actually effectively fight against now. Because previously it was just you get set on fire and then you have to have impossible precision when aiming for it. You have to do the weird thing to lob an ultimatum grenade. It just was not very fun, especially as soon as you get more than one of them. Automaton bunker turrets no longer ragdoll you from projectile explosions. Basically what this means is if a projectile from the bunker turret lands near you, it'll just damage you now. They used to ragdoll you like crazy, and again, I talked about how you can't fight back, you can't call a stratagem, you can't stim when you're ragdolled, so having that happen less often is really good. However, one thing to note that I don't think the patch notes make really clear is that it only removes the ragdolling from the explosion. If a bunker turret projectile hits you directly, you will still get ragdolled, but because you can somewhat see the projectile coming, you can just try and dive out of the way to make sure you're no longer in its direct line. The explosion will hurt a fair amount, but at least you won't get ragdolled and be, like, completely disabled from fighting. The War Strider shoots 2 fewer grenades per salvo, shoots grenades less frequently. Its bunker turrets have the same ragdolling removed from the other command bunker turrets, meaning that you only get ragdolled by a direct hit from its turrets now. And its 2 eyes, I believe the War Strider has 2 eyes, and both of them are weak points now, as well as the vents on the back. Finally, they gave the War Strider weak points like literally every single other bot enemy in the fucking game. This is one of the main reasons why I've enjoyed fighting the bots so much, is because it's all about the weak points. You aim for the weak point with whatever you got, and you can get really tactical about it. For the squids and even the bugs, like, it's just you get swarmed by these melee horde enemies and it's just panic simulator. You either have to throw an Eagle 500 at your feet or find a way to get out of an impossible situation where you're surrounded by things that are in your face. And obviously when something's in your face, a bullet is not gonna solve the problem. I mean, I do know that the saber from the Masters of Ceremony Warbond is effective against the squids, especially against sweeping down hordes of voteless, but I don't have that warbond yet. In general, though, I just do not like the melee horde enemies in Helldivers 2. I mean, honestly, when we were starting to see the state of the game get into this thing where there was like a whole ton of bugs and a whole ton of bouncing and stuff like that, I was straight up a bot diver for some time, just because the bugs were unfun, the squids were unfun, and the bugs and squids have both been unfun for a long time. When the game was in a decently working state, I was able to tolerate diving the bugs and the squids if it was for the purpose of contributing to the major order. But leading up to now, I have been kind of ignoring those in favor of just fighting the bots, because those are the only faction that actually feels like there's meaningful strategic counterplay. I can already hear the people in the comments going, "Oh, but Snake, you're just bad at the game." Shout out to the Gundam boy. But anyway, debates about which factions are fun to fight and which ones are not aside, we have a bunch of other miscellaneous fixes to the stratagems. We now have a bunch of crash fixes as well. We have a bunch of fixes to the weapon stats, and now melee weapons actually accurately display as medium pen. Gundam Boy was, again, the first to bring this to my attention in a video where he was demonstrating that every melee weapon has medium pen, but people didn't believe him because the game said they were light pen, even though it was very clear that they were actually medium pen. Arrowhead have finally definitively settled that debate. The game now accurately conveys that melee weapons are medium pen. We have a whole bunch of other miscellaneous bug fixes, and then a whole bunch of optimizations, and that is where the patch notes end. So it does seem like when push came to shove, the Mad Lads at Arrowhead actually did deliver, which is honestly something I was not entirely optimistic about because of how bad the communication has been. I still don't know if, like, without good communication, can they be trusted to just lock in behind closed doors and do the shit? I mean, they delivered this time, but it would still be nice to get clearer communication. We still need to talk about what happened to Buzz Lightyear and Erevan. The state of Helldivers 2 is in a very crazy spot right now, and it's just been this whole back and forth of it's so over and we're so back. And I think overall that sort of vicious cycle is actually a direct result of the way Arrowhead have been handling making changes to the game. I was thinking about this whole cycle of it's so over and we're so back, and we're currently in the we're so back stage and will hopefully be there for the foreseeable future. And it made me realize that Arrowhead seem to have a very reactive approach to the way they change Helldivers 2, more so than some of the other live service games I've seen. When we are in that it's so over state, Arrowhead do seem to listen to the feedback of the community, do their best to address it, given, you know, their ways that they handle communication, and then they apply some stuff to the game or they release content that we like. I mean, my friends did quite enjoy the ODST Warbond and the Xbox launch, being big fans of Halo. We've been waiting for this for a long time, but of course it had to be PlayStation that published this game, and they kept it exclusive to PS5 until the ODST launch and whatnot. That's a whole different story for another time. But yeah, overall, Arrowhead seemed to be taking a very reactive approach to the development and optimization and changing to this game. I don't know how sustainable that is, because these fluctuations between it's so over and we're so back seem to be getting wilder with each time. I mean, we've had some of the worst bugs in the history of the game, as well as the whole kerfuffle with the content creator program. And then Arrowhead delivers with rebalancing and optimizations and bug fixes, and we now seem to be back on the upwards trajectory and will hopefully continue on there for a while. I would quite enjoy a little bit more consistency in the way this game is handled. Hopefully, complacency doesn't take over at Arrowhead once again, once the game is back in a state where my friends and I can log on every night and just dive for managed democracy and for Super Earth. But, yeah, that's just my reaction to the patch notes, going through some of the stuff that I am most excited about. I do look forward to playing the game again, which is something that I haven't said for a while, and yeah, I think that'll be about it. Let me know your thoughts on the current patch and the state of Helldivers 2 and how playable it really is. Some people are still experiencing problems, but I have heard reports that even before this patch dropped, some people were able to fix the performance issues by doing things like updating their BIOS, adjusting their GPU settings, and updating their CPU and GPU drivers. So if you're still having issues after this patch, maybe look into that. Gundam Boy has a video on how he fixed his game before the patch. But yeah, if you've played this patch, let me know your thoughts on your experience in the comments. I'm sure I will be getting a variety of responses if the Helldivers community picks up on this podcast episode. And yeah, that'll be about it. Thanks for listening, everyone. I will talk to you all later. Enjoy the outro. As always, brought to you by Stability Music. Link in the description.